So excited for another episode of Plastic Surgery Uncensored. Tune in today. We're going to have one of my favorite young patients, Danielle, and her beautiful mom. We're going to be talking about breast reductions. And not just the story, the usual story of breast reductions, but what it's like to be a young gal and also the perspective of a mom. So you definitely want to check this out. So tune in to Plastic Surgery Uncensored. Welcome to another episode of Plastic Surgery Uncensored. I'm super excited. Today I'm very honored to have one of my favorite patients, Danielle, and her mom. And today's episodes, we're going to actually break it up into two separate episodes because I think this is a really important topic. It's going to highlight so many issues that I think that listeners, either yourself or people you know, are going to want to know about. Danielle was a young girl. How old were you when we first met?
We first met when I was 17.
17. So she was a 17-year-old young lady who was inquiring about a breast reduction. And what we want to do is talk about breast reductions, not just from the perspective of a regular patient, but what it's like to be a young patient, the stressors, the pressures, the decision-making, the perspective of a parent and how a parent has to navigate this. So I'm super, super excited to go over all these topics with you. So welcome to the show, both of you. Why don't you just say hi? And
hello.
Hello.
All right. So let's just dive into everything. So the question obviously is, you know, plastic surgery is always a hot topic because there's always going to be people on both sides. It's polarizing, right? There's people that are like, ooh, like my wife is like pro plastic surgery. And then there's people who are going to constantly be anti-plastic surgery, and for good reason, like love yourself. Why would you do that to yourself? We live in a society that's so concerned with beauty and superficiality, etc. So the first question that someone's going to ask themselves is going to be like, why would a 17-year-old, why did you want to get a breast reduction?
I think that the main reason as of why I wanted to get a breast reduction was because I was uncomfortable with myself, and I felt like it was stopping me from doing activities that I wanted to do and to wear certain things that I wanted to wear, but mostly my own comfort and my own confidence.
Okay, so let's give a little bit of a background. How tall are you?
5'1".
Okay, 5'1". How much do you weigh, if I may ask? This is supposed to be technically a bad question to ask a woman, but how much do you weigh?
126, 128.
Okay. Everyone who's over the age of 30 hates you already. So you're 5'1", 120, 130. And what size bra were you wearing, even though most women are, after like triple D, it gets into crazy letters?
What kind of bra?
I mean, it was like at least an E, but
Okay.
she didn't even want to go.
I refused.
She refused to even get measured at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So what that is important to understand is, so not that you have to justify it because it's irrelevant. It's your own body and you decide. But there is a component of this which is considered functional, right? You're 5'1", you weigh 120 some odd pounds, and genetically you were born with very large breasts. And so what were the things when you say that you couldn't do the things you wanted to do? What I'm a male. Many of the male listeners are like, that's great, wonderful, right? Women are paying money to go get a breast augmentation, and here you are, God-given. So what are the things that you couldn't do in that body?
I am very active, and I would come back from working out with like big scabs that were bleeding from my sports bra because when I would jump, it would kill me, and it would also hurt my back. I wouldn't be able to jump, right?
She loves to dance. She dances a lot. She works out a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would definitely it definitely put a damper on it. Like,
Were you wearing multiple bras? I know a lot of...
Two
Right.
sports bras.
Two sports bras.
And then I would roll a towel underneath so the sports bra wouldn't dig into my
Right.
skin.
it was cutting through her skin. Yeah. She wasn't able to jump. She wasn't able to run. She wasn't able to do a lot of things.
Right. So it's fairly justified that seems pretty harsh and fairly medically necessary, if you will.
And not to mention that she had really bad posture. I mean, she was constantly...
If you were carrying very heavy weight across your neck, you would also have that. And then clothing-wise, and people minimize the impact that physical conditions have on what we wear because who cares what you wear? But that's not true. We wear clothes constantly and it matters. So you're a young girl and you're not a fashion icon, but you want to go to the beach. What do you do?
For sure. I think that the beach was my biggest struggle, or wearing a bathing suit was my biggest struggle. Every store we would go to, I would break down in the dressing room. It was very, very hard for me. And when I would find a bathing suit that did fit, it was like tied so tight around my neck and so tight around my waist to try to support my breasts. And it was very uncomfortable at the beach and at the pool with my friends. It was something that it made me very, very uncomfortable.
Right. So it was something that's ever present in your mind, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you were, whether it was at school, whether it was at the beach, you know, you're a young person and you want to enjoy the period of your life where you're carefree and you can kind of just enjoy being. And it doesn't matter who you are, but if there's something about you that's constantly on your mind, whether it's the size of your nose and every time you're talking to someone, you're like, oh my God, I wonder if they're staring at my nose. And you're not ever even able to be present. Like a medical condition, if you have Crohn's disease and at every party, you're like wondering where the bathroom is. People underestimate those kinds of things. So who'd you tell? I mean, you told your mom, obviously. And who all did you tell that you were wanting or considering a breast reduction?
I told obviously my mom, my dad, I told him, I told two of my girlfriends, my cousin, my grandma. I kept it kind of private, even though I would complain about my breasts being big, but I wouldn't say to everyone, oh, I want to have a breast reduction. It was just kind of immediate family.
And why do you, so everybody has their reasons for keeping things private and or public. What was the reason that you felt that you kind of kept it to yourself? What were your thought processes?
Well, in the beginning, when I was 17, I was still uncomfortable with the fact that my breasts were big and I wanted to get a breast reduction. So
were you embarrassed?
More when I was 17, I was embarrassed. When I was 18 and I decided to get a breast reduction, I didn't tell many people because I had made my decision and I didn't want anyone else's, other than, of course, my parents. I didn't want their opinions.
Kind of convoluted, which is an interesting subject, right? Because here that plays into another issue. It's like you are an independent person. You have the luxury and you have great parents and you have some great support. Often what I find is a lot of people allow other people to chatter in their lives. It doesn't really matter about what it is. Oh, I want to marry this guy. Well, is he or I want to buy this house. These big decisions in life, and we're looking for people to guide us. Yeah. But we often go to the wrong people for guidance, right? So chances are you go to your bunch of your girlfriends, maybe they're catty, you don't know how much your best interest they have in heart.
Absolutely.
And then they start telling you all kinds of crazy things, right? So good for you, because I think that's a very mature way to go about it. Whereas perhaps when you're younger, you may want to like tell all your girlfriends and make sure everyone supports you and is on board.
Right. Maybe
less so when you're an adult. So number one question people always ask about breast reductions, it doesn't matter if you're young or older, is what were your fears? So what are like, it would be great if I had a wand and I go ding and your breasts just shrink by 50% and off you go. But we both know that's not the case. So what are your fears? What were they?
First of all, scars. And I know that's a really big fear for almost everybody, but scars were a fear of mine. They weren't my biggest fear, though. I was afraid of how much smaller they could actually be. And
in that you were afraid they'd be too small or they wouldn't be small enough?
Both. What if they're too small? What if they're not small enough? What if they're still big? All of those thoughts would go through my head.
Sometimes she would say, what if I got them done and they're not, and the size is not that substantial? You know, what if they're still big and then I did all this for just a little bit of a difference?
Right.
You know,
I think what you said about, I think breast reductions have been around since the beginning of plastic surgery. Mm-hmm. They're one of the oldest, if you will, earliest procedures we did. And the concerns or fears have been the same from the beginning of time, right? Number one is almost always across the board, scars, right? Because to get a real reduction, you often need what's known as an anchor, which is the incisions are around the areolas, down the middle of the breast and in the crease, right? There are other people who do it other techniques, but for the most part, let's just say scars in general. And most people are fearful for them because you're like, I'm just trading one, insecurity for another, right? My breasts are large. It caused me X, Y, and Z problems. Now I'm a 18-year-old girl with horrific scars. Is that really a good trade-off? It's arguable. Obviously, you're now liberated from the pain, but now are you going to be intimate and carefree? And so that's a huge concern. What else about size? It's a big concern, right? You and I talked about size on many occasions. What was our dialogue about size? Because what's the right size? Like, what do everyone who comes to me as a breast reduction has the buffet effect. You know what the buffet effect is? It's like you go to the buffet and you're like, well, shit, if this is a buffet, I'm going to eat until I can not eat anymore because it's a buffet. That's the whole idea. And with a breast reduction, it's the corollary to a breast augmentation, which is I'm huge. I want to be a B.
Yeah.
And I hear that often, over and over again. Like, I'm over it. If I'm going to get a breast reduction, I want to be a cute, small, perky bee, and I want to wear no bra and just go and be. Yeah. Right? That I mean, literally. So what's the right size? What was our dialogue? How do we decide size? Because I know a lot of people struggle with that.
Well, I remember that you would always explain to me that you can only make it so small that it still needs to be a nice breast. It needs to be
round and not
round,
square.
not square. It needs to be
boxy. I
Boxy,
think is
right?
the word you used is
Right.
boxy. And, you said you have to, take enough all around so it still has a nice shape and is.
Right. So we talked about that, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, because breast reduction has a huge functional component, right? Part of it is they're large and they're droopy, and I'm a young girl and they don't look attractive.
Right.
In your instance, and in most patients, that's kind of like tertiary. First is they're huge and they're heavy and they're just hurting my back. So most people approach it from a functional standpoint, right? And it's kind of reconstructive, like, I just need them to be smaller. And they completely ignore and or forget that they need to be beautiful and attractive. You're how old now?
19.
19. Imagine you had ugly breasts, but they were smaller. Would you be happy?
No.
Would that have been a good trade-off? Would that have been like, well, I mean, 6 of one, half of the other? No, but at that time, you're not even thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And you assume incorrectly, and this is a huge topic that I try to stress when people come in for consults, that they're going to be pretty but smaller. And that is not the case, because the second issue with breast reductions after ugly scars is poor shape, boxy, flat, square. Right? And did you look online and see a bunch of those online?
A bunch.
Yeah, it scares you when you go online and you start looking, and that's the younger generation. That's what they do. Yeah. And you see all types, but that's where you have to obviously, choose the perfect doctor, the right doctor for you, the one that you feel the most comfortable with. And the one that, you feel like could do the best job. And also I feel like I think if you decide to do a breast reduction, I don't think it's the time to save, if one doctor is a little bit less expensive than the other doctor. I personally don't think that that's the time to save money.
Right. And we'll get to that, because I think that's really, really important. But I think what's really important, we want to stress right here, is that breast reductions are functional and cosmetic. And often the cosmetic is lost in the conversation. And so what that plays into is the idea of size. If you get to just say, I want to be a B, and your doctor nods his head and you become a B, but you have a very wide chest,
right,
as do many breast reduction patients, you will be a flat, square B. You understand? Because it's the diameter of your chest, which is what we were talking about. You want the roundest, smallest breast that fits on your chest. What size is that? I have no idea.
Exactly.
Right? Remember what I said to you? And you said, well, what size will I be? And I said, I have no idea. Why? Because unless you tell me, Dr. Bond, I don't care about the way they look, just make them a certain size, then I am obligated by geometry. I'm beholden to geometry. Geometry doesn't care about anything. For them to be as small as possible, but still beautiful. And there's just nothing beyond that. So what size are you now?
Now I'm a double D.
Okay, so people are going to be like, you're a double D. What the hell? But first and foremost, we all know that sizing is ridiculous, right? You're a 30, 32, which means you're tiny.
She's a 30, yeah.
That you're automatically blink, and you're a D. So you're not a 38 double D, because a 38 double D is like the size of your head. Right. It's not the same. But you went from some letter that nobody knows what it is, G.
Nobody wants to know.
Right? To a double D, which is what? Manageable and still fits your frame, and you're not suddenly went into nothingness, right? And so we're going to get into the second phase of our conversation. And when we talk in our second episode about what has changed, how has this made a difference? Is your life any better, or was it kind of a buzzkill or whatnot? So I want to go now, kind of turn a little bit and talk about moms and dads, right? Because from a young girl's perspective, it's like, I'm living this. I need this thing. I need help. Parents are in a very unique bind, because they have this duality where they want to protect their child from doing something foolish that they're going to regret. At the same time, they want to facilitate the well-being of their child. Like, I want her to be happy, but I don't want to be helping her do something that she's going to regret, and then she's going to feel like, Mom, why'd you let me do this? I was like 17. Yeah. Right. What the hell do I know? So, what did you think of the idea, Mom?
I mean, I had breast reduction myself when I was 17. I had the same issue. So of course I was very supportive of her, but at the same time, it's different when it's your child. You look at it and you're scared, of course, and you worry about the scars. You want her to be happy with the results. You also don't want her to have unrealistic expectations. Like when she kept asking me, like, what size am I going to be? What size am I going to be? So I didn't want her to like be disappointed, which she's not. She's very happy. But, my husband was also very, he was scared.
Right. So what was, because a mother's perspective, even if she didn't have a breast reduction, it's going to be way different than a father's perspective. Yeah. So he's not here to vouch for himself. But you tell me, what was the dad's perspective?
Well, he was scared. And at first he was a little hesitant. He was, he was like, does she really need it? Does she, is it really that bad? But, again, coming from a place where I got it done, I explained to him, all the things that a girl goes through, having such huge breasts, and how it kind of like stops you from so many things that you need to do, and your confidence, and back pains, and the scars that you have on your shoulders from your bra. I mean, there's just so many things that you go through that people don't think about. But I also, as a mother too, even though I wanted and I was very supportive of her, but I always wanted it to be her decision. So, right. Like I said, when she was 17, we started the process and we went to a few doctors, including you.
Right.
And she left there and she was not 100%. And I said to her, this has to be 100% your decision, even though I did it and I felt really good about it, but it's not me. Now it's you.
Right.
So, it took her a year to be ready. And
so let's talk about that, because that's the right next segment, right? Which is, okay, so I've come to grips that this is something I need to do as a young lady. And then I've spoken to my parents, they're on board, and then becomes a process. There's a whole nother process, and that's the research phase, right? And this is, again, unique. Why is this unique? Do you let her do her own research? Do you do the research for her? Do you guys decide together? How do you navigate this? Because, today, the way we go about getting information is totally different. She's going to go on Instagram. She's going to go on her feed, and you're going to go to maybe ask your friends and their daughters, or maybe even go to a website. So let's go back to you, Danielle. How did you do your research? So you decided, your parents are like, check, we're on board. And you said it took a year before you decided. So tell me the whole journey of research, because someone's going to be sitting at home and be like, oh my God, I totally am inspired by this, because I'm 17 and I don't even want to go out with my friends. I want to do this. So like, you made that choice. What do you do?
Well, we did research together, but I also did research on my own, which was actually through my Instagram. I would look at different doctors and pictures, and then I would click onto, if they tagged the person that just got the breast reduction, I would click onto maybe her profile, and she would post about her experience.
Right.
Read that. And I read a few different stories, and each story ended in a positive way, and the woman was happy, and so it kind of continued to encourage me. But when it came to the process of finding a doctor, I was a little bit more about talking with my mom and my parents about what they thought, because I thought I trusted their opinion.
So I think that's really, really important. So anyone who's listening to this, I want to really crystallize this. So when it comes to getting encouragement in that procedure, mm-hmm. I'm all for Instagram and patient testimonials and stories and journeys and YouTube and all that jazz. Very useful. And I think in that regard, it has really improved and empowered plastic surgery. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to picking a doctor, I would highly caution you. It is not the most ideal platform. There is very little regulation. It's all about smoke and mirrors. It's all about marketing and sort of, I hate to say it, bait and switch. So I love the fact, again, reiterating your maturity at your age, that at the time when it came to actually finding a physician, you collaborated with your parents and allowed them to help you in finding a physician, which doesn't mean you don't use Instagram and Facebook, but there are better or sort of concomitant ways that you can can look into physicians. So then, so what did you guys do? How did you, so you decided through the social media platform that I do think that people are having breast reductions and it seems like everyone's happy. Yeah. So how'd you find a doctor?
Well, for me, I'm a little more old school, so I don't go to Instagram and to find a doctor. For me, it's more about talking to people and having their own experience and
talking to people as in
people
young
that
girls
have
that had the surgery or moms of girls who had surgery?
Both. I mean, some of my friends had, you know, breast reduction. So I knew a couple of girls that actually did their breast reduction. And then I met some other people that other doctors did their breast reduction. So you kind of talk to people and kind of like ask them questions, their experiences with their doctors. And then, you know, you make appointments and you see which one you feel the most comfortable with.
Okay,
you know?
so that's a great idea.
To me, I feel like you really need to like having a referral, having someone that has actually experienced that doctor is a lot more
valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be the same thing about going on a date from Tinder versus going on a date from a friend that your girlfriend set you up with. There's always more credibility in that regard. But what you said is the exact truth, which is at the end of the day, it's not ideal to go one guy and be like, wow, this is the guy. That would be like going on a date and then saying, this is the guy I want to marry. Mm-hmm. At the same time, you don't want to go to like 30 appointments because you'll get confused. But you should kind of go to a few, A, to know what you like, and B, to get a perspective. So you started the journey at 17.
Yeah.
And you went to how many physicians in total?
We went to three.
Okay.
Three or four.
Three or four. But... And then what allowed you to decide, Danielle, what was your decision like? Okay, well, I went to these four and I don't know, for whatever reason, Dr. Raban what clicked for you? What was the key?
When I was 17 and I came to you the first time, after I went to all the 3 or 4 different physicians, the minute that I left your office, this is going to sound cheesy, but like
She's not paid for this.
No.
But I told my mom, when I'm ready, the minute I got on the car, I said, when I'm ready, I don't know if I'm ready right now to get a breast reduction, but when I am, I want to go to Dr. Raban.
Okay, so what was it? So that says 2 things. I like to just keep highlighting things, which is, one is that you knew that you weren't ready. Mm-hmm. So people think plastic surgery is very impulse driven. Not at all. So you got the information, you got to where you needed, but yet you weren't ready. And you said, I'm going to put it on the back burner, but I've sort of figured out where I want to go. So that's issue number 1. Second is, what was it for you? Because it's going to be different for everybody else. Somebody might say, wow, the office is so clean. That's good for me. The girl in the front was so lovely. What was it for you that made you, having seen 4 surgeons that said, click, this is the connection?
I mean, the office is very clean and the staff is very lovely, but I think that it's the connection between the patient and the doctor and that trust that you don't necessarily feel with everyone. Also, every other doctor that I went to kind of talked about sizing and, oh, you'll be closer to a C, oh, you'll be closer to a D. And the minute that you said it's not about the size, it's about the shape and making them look good, something kind of just clicked into my head, because before I had this picture like, oh, I want to be this size. Oh, I want to be this size. But then when you told me it's about how beautiful they look and how symmetrical and round and perky, that was kind of what made me on the same page as you and really understand. And then that's when I felt
that's great. So that's something that is tangible.
Mm-hmm. And to me, I honestly loved the honesty. I mean, some people can't hear the honest opinion. They go to the person that's going to tell them what they want to hear. But I just feel like that's unrealistic. I think you should go to the one that, even though it's the honest opinion, the honest, I think that it's better because that doctor is going to give you the best results, even though like the other doctors were telling her, oh, you'll be a C. But in the end of the day... Could you imagine
right now, just out of curiosity, because you are who you are now, it's all done. Imagine if you were a C, just for the sake of discussion and looking at your current breast. Does that now fully make sense that had you been a C right now, you could imagine that your breasts would be a different shape than they currently are?
For sure. 100%.
So that's really the crux of it, right? Because now you have the benefit of having you had a significant breast reduction. So functionally, which we will get to in the second episode, you're better, but beauty-wise, because breasts are a beautiful part of our anatomy, you look gorgeous. And so you don't have to give one for the other. So I think, I think those, you guys are, the reason why I have you here today is for a number of things. One is because you're a lovely, lovely patient and mother, and we enjoy having you. Two, you guys are both you represent what I would hope for all mother-daughters who are going through this process, which is, it was collaborative, it was intelligent, it was done with research and patience. And I think you represent a very mature young lady that perhaps can be a model for other girls who are considering or contemplating not just breast reduction, but other surgeries. So we're going to wrap up this particular episode. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a second episode. And that second episode is going to be dedicated to the aftermath. We can even call it the aftermath. And we're going to talk about all the beautiful things that have come as a result of our work together and how life has changed after your breast reduction. So you definitely want to stay tuned and check us out on our next episode of Plastic Surgery Uncensored. We're here with Danielle and her mom. Please check us out.